My name is Klaas Kooistra, Product Manager at FinDock, and I'll be hosting this webinar together with Laurens Wapenaar, also Product Manager at FinDock, about our September 23 release, which will be published to your production environments on September 24th. And all things we will be talking about today are already in your sandbox environments. If you want to keep track of status, subscribe to status.findock.com to see the status of the release on the September 24th and know when everything is ready in your environment. We have a lot to cover today. First, we want to talk about our pilots that are running and also touch upon the new non-profit cloud Salesforce is launching. Secondly, we want to talk about the new FinDock setup experience, which is a new, very exciting pilot that we're launching. We want to tell you something about the support for the Salesforce integration user license and talk about bugs and enhancements and some exciting new updates on the FinDock Academy. But let's start with pilots and the non-profit cloud. So with this release, we have a couple of things in both in pilot and beta. So in the July release, we launched BSIM in beta, which will remain in beta for this release. We're launching the Salesforce integration user license in beta as well. And we're launching a new pilot in the setup experience, which we will talk about later. Similarly, we will move all the things we have done for the Norwegian direct debits and VIPs to GA, but more on that later. As you might have noticed, Salesforce is launching a new non-profit product, which is called the Non-Profit Cloud. And FinDock will launch a native integration to the Non-Profit Cloud on the October the 17th. It will be a similar pattern to our current MPSP integration. It will be fully managed, just like you're used to with MPSP, with extendable mapping of fields, room for customization and updates on statuses, and person account support. We have more to share on that in the coming weeks when the launch is nearing on October 17th. But we want to highlight a couple of ways where you can learn more. So last week we launched a blog on how we are going to extend the non-profit cloud with FinDock. We are launching a webinar on October 12th that you can sign up through findock.com/events to learn more about the details of how that integration will work. And when the pilot of the non-profit cloud integration launches, we will have documentation available on docs.findock.com so you can get started and learn more on how this will work and how you can get this to work with the non-profit cloud. We are very excited to see what's coming and are really looking forward to your feedback on what we've built on top of the non-profit cloud. We are moving as well our Norwegian features, which we've been building over the last year, to GA, and we are very excited about that. Both VIPs and AvtaleGiro have been tested with multiple customers. We've seen great feedback and made a couple of changes during the beta period and also in last release where we fixed some final bugs. And we're now confident and ready to make this generally available to all customers if they want to use it. If you want to learn more or want to use this feature, you can always reach out to the regular channels, either to your account executive or to support@findock.com, and we can help you get started. Now it's time for our main topic of today, which is the renewed FinDock setup experience, which we're launching a pilot. And I'm very excited to hand it over to Laurens, who's going to tell you all about it.
Thank you, Klaas. So we have been are on a continuous journey to make FinDock easier to implement as one of our main themes for this year. Last webinar, we already talked about the many ways we are doing this, but I think it's good to repeat them. So we're doing product improvements to fix bugs and to add smaller features that are much requested to prevent you from having to implement customization. We are adding in-app guidance, and this is also where the new setup fits in. We are adding additional guidance in the form of the new FinDock Academy and improvements to our knowledge base or documentation website, and we have launched more tooling and examples, for instance, through our FinDock Labs initiative. But today we'll be talking mostly about our new setup experience. So currently, we feel our setup experience is ready for a bit of an update. And we're doing that through basically rebuilding the whole thing, but supporting the same features as we do now. Now, what are we doing here to make things better for you and faster? The first thing is we're trying to do everything from Salesforce now. So currently we still, for instance, have an installer outside of Salesforce. We want to bring that mechanism into the product itself. So you don't have to context switch between different apps anymore. We want to automate a whole bunch of tasks that we think are not required anymore, or automate them, or simply remove the requirement to do certain tasks. We want to make things easier to find by having better navigation. I'll show you what that looks like in the demo. And we want to make it easier for you to do things through better guidance and to a better user experience. Rather than diving deep into all of these things, 2 slides, I would like to show you what that looks like currently and give you a bit of an idea where we're trying to go and how you can help us get there. So here you see the first page of our new setup. Now, since this is in pilot, the homepage of the setup is still under construction. But one thing you can already see is that the tab is now called FinDock Setup. You can find this new setup simply in your Salesforce app by searching for FinDock, and then it will often be the first result that you get. You can already see what we've done to make navigating the setup easier. We've introduced the left-hand menu with all the different functionality that we have. So we talk about payment collection, the different processes and methods, payment request generation, bank statement import, all these things. And we also try to guide you in the right directions. So for instance, this environment doesn't have much setup. So we immediately tell you it's time to first set up a payment processor. Like I said, we're trying to do everything from the setup here. So this is where we want you to install your processors. As you can see, we have a list of processes here. We explain a little bit what they are and who they are for. And if required, we provide you with relevant links to additional guidance like our documentations. For instance, if you need to choose between a direct debit solution, we have content on that in our documentation website, and we link it here in context so it's easy to find. But let's say we want to have a simple setup, and for the purpose of this pilot, I think that's okay. We can simply scroll down and find our Stripe processor here. We click the install Stripe button. We tell you what's going to happen. And when you confirm this, we run into an error, unfortunately. But you would usually see a login button here that would take you to the authorization, and then we would install this in the background. Well, unfortunately, we ran into the error, but it would also take far too long to wait for that. So I have an environment where I've already done this, which is this one. And you can see here that Stripe was installed, even though the other payment processors that are still available to you are here at the bottom. One thing, what we've tried to do is to put all the settings for a certain processor or a certain payment method in one place. Currently, that's scattered across different tabs. For instance, there's an activation tab, but the creation of a Stripe account or the connection of a Stripe account is in a different place in the setup. And we've tried to bring that all together so you can do all the Stripe settings in one place. In this case, that means creating an account or activating a payment method, which you can toggle here. Again, here we've added some inline guidance for you in case you're not completely sure what happens when you enable something. We will try to, as much as possible, tell you here. And if there's just too much to know, then we link to articles in our documentation and in the future as well to relevant content in our FinDock Academy. You can simply activate your payment methods here, or if you'd like to, add an account, very similar to what we used to do before, but we've updated the experience with relevant warnings. Like in this environment, I don't have webhook connected yet, which is required for you to connect with Stripe. So we use this. We disable, for instance, the button to prevent you from running into potential issues because some default configuration hasn't been set up yet. Now, once you've implemented multiple processors, your end result could look something like this. And we've tried to give you a bit of an overview here of all the different processors. Well, this environment is a bit crazy because I have everything installed. But you can already see here that we give you a nice list of everything that's available in this environment. Basically what the status is. If something is wrong or went wrong with the installation, we show there was an error, and we have relevant logging available for you. But if things are correct and okay, we also show you, for instance, what payment methods are activated, how many accounts are set up for this specific processor. So you don't have to click open every single thing to find out what's active and what is not. Hopefully this gives you some idea of the direction we're trying to go in. And we are very excited to expand this functionality to all our processes and all our functionality. So let's get back to our slides. So we really need your help to create the best possible version of this. What you've seen is a pilot version. And since we try to work very hard to get especially the user experience right, it would be very helpful if you would join us for a 30-minute usability test where we give you a specific set of tasks and then observe whether you are able to execute it based on what we have provided in the app. This gives us a lot of information about the choices we've made, but also how people think and whether there are differences between people think and what we should do to update the experience. On the other end, since this is a pilot, you can also very much use this simply for your project. I do have to say that currently we only support Stripe in this way, which will be extended in further releases. But if you'd like to try this out in your own time or in a project, simply shoot us an email and we will enable this in your environment. If you have any further question, you can post this here in the chat or email us at these email addresses. So I've already mentioned it once or twice, our FinDock Academy. I'm happy to announce that the FinDock Academy is out of the first pilot and is now open to everyone. You can simply sign up at academy.findock.com and access the content. Currently, we have about 4 courses, some basic courses around how to get started with FinDock, how to configure certain things, but also on payment processors and payment methods. So how does the payment world work? And very much more specific, we have some intermediate courses around FinDock and Bucks Direct Debit for the UK and how to do bank statement import and other reconciliation with FinDock. Also here, if you have any feedback, please don't hesitate to shoot us an email. This content will be expanded in the coming months to extend to other, for instance, areas of FinDock or processors. On the knowledge base, to give you an example of what we're trying to do here is we've reworked the navigation around reconciliation and our bank statement imports, and also adjusted the content here. This is an area where we got a lot of questions about file formats, about how we map certain things to Salesforce data. So we've refactored this a little bit and added some additional guidance. So that was it for our renewed FinDock setup experience this time. Next release and the releases after, hopefully more about this. Our next topic is our support for the new Salesforce integration user license. We've done a little bit more than just that. So we've completely resigned our permission set structure or permission structure. The main thing, one of the triggers for this is, of course, the new Salesforce free Salesforce user license that currently couldn't be used with our permission sets because they contain, for instance, Lightning and Visualforce pages, which are not allowed for this user license. And the second is that for our new setup experience, we also wanted to make permissions more easy. So if we look at our permissions, there's basically two types. We have our core permissions that allow you to do and run certain processes. And for each package, we have some permissions around fields or specific Apex permissions for that package. We got the feedback a lot from consultants that these permissions were way too broad. We only had 2 role-based permission sets, integration and operations, even though most customers had more roles than that. So for instance, call center or a finance person, different than an operations person. They were also inflexible. Basically, they just contained everything, and it was very hard to optimize the permission structure for a specific project. And, well, in this case, most importantly, they were not compatible with the free integration user license. What we've done is we've redesigned this based on the conversations with system integrators to the following structure. So we have, instead of role-based permission sets, we now have functionality-based permission sets. So a permission set that lets you run a payment schedule or a mandate schedule, or maybe the payments request generator or some other piece of functionality. And then we group these into the new permission set groups that Salesforce provides. And these groups are role-based. So these groups have names like the FinDock finance user permission set or the FinDock integration user permission set group. And this means in this way we have we were more able to instead of have broad permission sets, work with the least privilege concept. This also makes it more modular because you yourself can add your own permission sets to these groups, and then you only have to assign a group to a type of user once, and then, you know, if you want to give all those users more permissions, you can simply add a permission set. If you want to disallow certain permissions or a permission set that we have automatically added to a group, you can mute them. So you can simply, well, not allow those permissions in that group without having to create your own groups. But if you still want more flexibility, you can take our current permission sets and combine them in a permission set group of your own. Most importantly, these permission sets can now be assigned to the new free Salesforce integration user license, which means that we think that almost all our customers can save at least 1, often 2, sometimes 3 licenses from their current contract. Important to know is that we cannot support our V1 API with this integration user license because it relies on certain Visualforce pages, which is something that that is never allowed to be assigned to a user with this user license. But all customers using our V2 API can use this. So finally, onto our bugs and enhancements. We have a whole set of these, which we always try to do during the holidays. There's not enough time for me to go over each and one of them. But if you'd like to see what we did, for instance, for gift date or Molly or SIPA, you can read all about this in the release notes on our documentation website. If you have any questions about these, please don't hesitate to contact us through support@findock.com. That's all what we wanted to discuss today. Me and Klaas will stick around for questions, but if you have somewhere else to be today, then this will be your cue. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.